Okay, next step in our project 7, we have this COUNTIF and AVERAGEIF. So the COUNTIF is pretty simple. The AVERAGEIF a little more complicated. So let's start with COUNTIF. COUNTIF is our function starter. Remember, equal sign at the beginning. Then we're going to tell it what range to count. And since this is an if statement, we're going to tell what criteria to look for so that they're only counting what we want. So in our example here, we're going to count the number of students who have been elected to offices in student organizations. So we're only going to count those that say yes. Okay, so I've pulled up our spreadsheet. And so what the instruction wants us to do is count the students who have been elected to office. So we're going to tell our function to take a look at this column, the elected column, I, and see if there's a yes or a no. We only want it to count the ones that say yes. So real simple, elected students, make sure I'm selected in the right cell, Q8, equal COUNTIF, open parentheses. So we want it to first look over here into this range. I'm going to select the range. So it's going to look there. Notice that it populated with the range's name here. And then comma, and I'm going to tell it what to look for. So only count students who have a yes in that particular cell. Close the parentheses, green check mark, and look at there. I've got a number 11 here. So students that have been elected. If you want to test it to make sure that it actually works, we can change this no to a yes. Yes. And it did update my number from 11 to 12. Now make sure that if you do testing like that you always go back and undo that change you made. Otherwise, future things won't work so well. So now let's take a look at the AVERAGEIF. That's a little bit more complicated, but still, you can do it. All right, back here to our assignment instructions, AVERAGEIF. We want to build an AVERAGEIF function to determine the average number of post-secondary years for students who have been elected. So we've got two different rows that are columns that are being affected here. We want it to only average the post-secondary years for students who have been elected. So our AVERAGEIF gives us the range and the criteria first. So this first, we're going to look at the column that has whether or not they've been elected. That will be the range, and the yes will be the criteria. But then we also have to tell it what column that we want an average of, because we don't want an average of whether they've been elected or not. We want an average of the number of post-secondary years. So let's take a look at our spreadsheet. Okay, so my AVERAGEIF is going to go over here to QR. All right, that's where the formula is going to go. But let's take a look at what we need here. Now remember, we want the average if the student is elected. So we're going to select that first and then yes. And then we need to tell it which column to actually do the average of. And that will be column D, post-secondary years. Okay, so I'm going to click in my cell where I want the formula to go, equal AVERAGEIF, open parentheses. All right, so now it's even trying to help me. It wants to know the range first. So I am going to select this range all the way down. There we go. All right, so now we've given it the range up here, comma, because I'm following my format up here, comma, and the criteria is going to be yes. Remember those quotes because we're looking for a word, comma. Now we need to tell it what range that we want an average of. Okay, so we told it where to look and what condition to look for, but now we have to tell it what to average. So I am going to scoot this up just a little bit more, scroll over, post-secondary years. So I'm going to highlight that. I want an average of those. And then close my parentheses and check mark. All right, so the formula is working. So what it did was it looked to see if someone is elected or not. And only for those who've been elected, it's going to take a look at how many post-secondary years they have and give me an average of that. So pretty easy. You just have to understand your spreadsheet and know what the question is actually asking.